as a believer, well, I should be looking to the word to inform me of how I should shape my business, regardless of an upcoming transaction, right? Like I
Yeah.
should hope to imbue within my business Christian principles that make life for employees, make the brand, make customers' experience of the company different than other places that don't have Christian principles.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Guidelight podcast. I am super excited today. In case you missed the last episode that my dear friend Jay Mink was on, I'm going to go through his little bio, probably a little more briefly. I think I may have
Yeah,
built it up
please.
a little too much last time, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, he's definitely worth it. But Jay's a dear friend of mine, and he and I have known each other for a while. You're going to love hearing his viewpoints today on some of our topics that we're talking about for structuring your business for exit. So his background is being leading Cognition, an award-winning branding and marketing agency, served nonprofits globally. He also was the senior director with Benchmark International, bringing ownership experience into mergers and acquisitions, just doing phenomenal work there with a lot of people, just making a big difference in that area, and just a lot of other things. But most importantly, what Jay would say was his family. And what he's most proud of is his obviously lovely wife, who just shared with me some great time they got to get away here recently and spend some great time together. So we know he cherishes that because he's got 3 kids. You have 3 kids, you don't always get that alone time.
Yep.
And so he serves as an elder in Uptown Church. And so I just want us all to welcome Jay to the Guidelight. Welcome,
Thanks.
my brother.
Thanks, Jason. Good to be with you, buddy.
Oh, glad you're here. Glad you're here. So today's topic, structure business for exit. And so that is what we're going to be talking about a little bit. I guess we'll just get right into the questions, Jay. I mean, so there's so many aspects. Like later, I was thinking through this topic. I was like, how are we going to squeeze this into a 20-minute podcast? And so I wanted to just get some high points. You and I both know there's so much more into some of these things.
Yeah.
And so the first one is, how early should an owner begin structuring for a profitable exit, and what's the first step?
Yeah. So I think the reality of that question is when you start to form the company, because there will be a transaction. The business will change hands. That's a fact. Now, it might be when you die. It might be in a way that is not necessarily favorable, but there will be a beginning and there will be an end to a tenure of starting leading, growing a company. So the reality is it should be at the front end.
Yes.
The majority, believe it or not, of founders, of lower mid-market small business founders, will start a business and it be a going concern and really not have a plan for an exit. They're not thinking exit at all, which is really a disservice, because there's within the M&A space, what, or in the process, you might discover what buyers are looking for in quality businesses. And so there are levers that you can pull. There are things you can tweak in the process of growing a business that's going to be a real benefit and put you in a stronger position come a potential exit or a partial exit. It might be, hey, I've taken this business to the extent that I'm able on my own. I need an equity partner to be in this thing to help me go to the next level, right?
That's what we did. That's exactly.
What we did. Right. So, so long-winded answer is when you're drafting out the business plan, it should be a part of consideration at that point. But if it's not, if you kind of missed that boat, that's okay. You're in good company. The time is now, right? It's like, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? Well, 50 years ago or today, and so, today's a good day to start learning what you might need to do to make your business more attractive for an exit.
Absolutely. And I hate to admit this, but I literally just now reached out to read John Warlow's book, Built to Sell. And that, I believe, is a great resource. I haven't even finished it, but just kind of know where it's going. I understand the principles behind it, because I've lived it. Sure. And just understanding that, so for anyone out there listening, if they're like, wow, where do I start? I will always suggest get a hold of that book, listen to it. It's a great book. It's a very engaging read. And it just walks you through a scenario of what another business owner did, and you'll get tons of information, tons of ideas, and it inspire you and encourage you to just think outside the box. And that's why, one of the things you and I talk about, Jay, a lot is, as business M&A brokers, like, engage with someone on that front to get some experience. We'll talk about that here shortly, because that is one of my next questions. So I'll hold off on that. But one of them was, next one was, how do you prepare your financial statements, tax records, and contracts so a buyer's due diligence goes smoothly? So you got three aspects there: financial statements, tax records, contracts. And we can expand on what contracts means a little bit. But, that, to me, in my world, like, that wasn't a strength as a business owner. I didn't pay attention to a lot of that stuff. And luckily my business was a little simpler than that, but there were still, like, the deep dive, they go into that. And if you don't have that kind of stuff, I mean, that has an impact.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, and I think you're already alluding to the real benefit of it is in due diligence, there are a lot of requests. It's like death by a thousand cuts. People get deal weary in that process. And so a lot of owners can be like, what did I get myself into? I'm not sure I even want to do this anymore. Like, they kind of stick to it because they've got so much invested in the process already. But it is always more onerous than people believe. And a lot of founders, small business owners are optimists generally, right? They're like, oh yeah, I could do this. And so that's why they started becoming entrepreneurs in the first place. And so they'll absolutely enter into due diligence with that same, personality. Like, oh yeah, this won't be so bad. I'll be fine. And then they come to find, like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? Because they're full-time running the business still, right? In the business, and they're full-time trying to complete a transaction. And that's a lot. So to your question specifically, it's just getting those ducks in a row prior, right? So that's probably the biggest thing that you can do, is having well-organized files for your financials, for your contracts, all that sort of stuff. And then there's specifically things that you can do to prepare your business to be more attractive to a seller, to facilitate a smoother due diligence. In terms of your financials prep, you can condition your financials ahead of the curve so that there's less issues, less questions, that you're running into in due diligence. So that's one example. Or with contracts, right? Like, you're going to want to make sure that contracts are transferable. Like, there's certain things that you can create within contracts while you're doing business that are going to make them more attractive and have less issues to deal with in due diligence when it's time to sell. So there's a lot of things you can do. Lion share things are done way ahead of the curve. If you don't do that, then, not the end of the world. It's just going to be more work and due diligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, one of the things I know that was, I guess when I went through my first deal, is understanding and trying to pull out and earmark, those owner benefits, those discretionary funds that gear more toward that aren't going to transpire over to the new owner. Yeah. And earmarking those in your books and kind of having a good feel on that to get a picture of true cash flow like that, because that's just going to make your number go up in your EBITDA and everything. So that's always a positive. So, all right, this next question is something that's near and dear to my heart, just because I've seen it work out in my own organizations. I've partnered with other organizations and seen the ebb and flows of this challenge, but building an exit ready team. Like, in your experience, what's the best approach to developing a leadership team that can run the business without the owner? Because, you and I both know, if the business is too much dependent on the owner, then that can be sometimes a negative. And so building that leadership team, give me your thoughts on that and maybe some of your experiences and what you've seen.
For sure, anytime you've got a business that's too dependent on the owner, you've got a lifestyle business. So that is going to reduce, not to say that you can't transact a lifestyle business, but you're just going to trade for a lesser multiple. It's not going to be as attractive for the seller. And I've seen more and more deals in the past few years where the acquirer actually wants the founder, assuming they're young and interested, to have maybe part of the deal structure be rollover equity where they stay on in the next iteration. And the buyer understands like, hey, part of the value really is the owner. Like they are integral to this thing. So it's a little bit of a balance between wanting to make sure that you've got a legitimate, strong business built and having good people around you. That's part of the value that people are buying. Like why else would somebody be acquiring a business, when they could maybe start it from scratch, right? Ground up. Well, you got to go find great people. Like that's one key element. And so assembling a great team where they've got very distinct lanes that they're operating well in, maybe they still need executive CEO level leadership. That's okay, but if you've got a founder that's deep in the weeds on bookkeeping and CFO activities or sales and executive leadership across the whole company or running the whole marketing thing, like when you have somebody doing too many things, that's where it becomes problematic. And so that really is like, well, if this person were removed, if they get hit by a bus, even if it's rollover equity, if they get hit by a bus, we're kind of up a creek. Too much of this business is dependent on them. So yeah, that's where you want to have a great team, but just be sure that when you're exercising leadership within the company, right, you're distinct in where you're applying your time.
Yes. And for me, I think I was fortunate. I had a lot of mentors speaking to me early on in my career where, very early on, we built up a leadership team and to where I was not the most important cog. And I would even lead like that. I was like, guys, I'm expendable in some ways if we're doing this right. But to your level, just always being there to continue to lead on some level. And what I've heard some business owners, say, well, how do you find, that executive leadership? How do you find someone to step up to be that true operations director or vice president? And I've always suggested start early. Like you said, start when you start the business. But as you recruit with that in mind, even if they're at a mid-level or even an operational level, like try to look for people that have qualities that you might be able to groom them into that future level. And I've seen some of the most successful businesses be people that started out at an entry level, they got to the next level, and by the time they get to that VP level or the director's of operations level, they've earned the trust of the team, they've bought into the culture, they're already part of so much. It's very easy versus you trying to go out and find someone that has that and you're kind of importing it into the organization. Not that that's not doable. I've seen a lot of successful opportunities in that happen as well. But I think just having that mindset of, okay, I need to build people that can lead, like me and take over some of these responsibilities. You'll just be stronger. I think it positions you more for growth as well. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And many hands make light work, right? So to the extent that you've got good people surrounding you, a good team built, the business is going to be better. So it's almost like chicken or the egg. So to the extent that you have a great team, you're going to have a great business. And the more you can build up a great team that really owns their particular departments or areas, that's going to benefit you. It's going to make you more attractive as an acquisition target, and it's going to generate a better multiple.
Yes, absolutely. So this is, again, something I keep saying things are near and dear to my heart because we've lived so much of this, and some of this more recently. When we started our business, I was not always the best at building SOPs, standard operating procedures. And so talk a little bit about why do buyers value a documented standard operating procedures, and how can owners start creating them today? Because like for us, we're a little bit smaller, but even as we grew, we didn't have everything written down. But that's something we've leaned into to where I've literally said, if it's not written, it's not real. And so let's document. But talk about what that means and why it's important to a buyer.
Yep. Well, I like to say you got, brain surgery and rocket science, right? You got those two. So this isn't rocket surgery. Okay. It's, if you order something off Amazon, let's say it's like a new bed frame and it shows up without any instructions. How good of an experience is that? How much confidence do you have in that manufacturer, in that, product itself? It's going to be harder to deal with. That same principle is applied to business. If you have everything well documented. One, you're coming across a whole lot more professional. Two, you're instilling confidence in the ability, in the acquirer's ability to, once they have purchased the business, know that it's going to continue to run the way it has in terms of achieving its performance, right?
Right.
And they've also got a solid foundation to build from. And so the ability to have SOPs in place is kind of mission critical.
Yes.
You know, and so, yeah, you've got to do it. If you don't have one, you know, start somewhere. Start somewhere. If you've got some, but you don't have a lot, you know, then look at, okay, where are the holes? What can I fill in?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think too, when an acquirer is looking at a business, what they're also looking for is scalability. And to the extent you don't have documentation and systems in place and they're well honed, the thing's not really scalable yet. And
Right.
acquirers want to be able to know that they're going to make a buy and be able to grow it and add value. Like they're looking for value add plays. But you know, having some confidence that they're not going to have to reinvent the wheel is really beneficial.
Exactly. I know. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you know, when I talk with other business owners and they don't really have much in that space, like you said, start somewhere. I always try to do a little investigation, talk them through what are the top 3 things that you think could make impact like this quarter, and just pick one of them and then start there. And then we always talk about when you're starting to implement SOPs, do it at the right pace, because you can give your team whiplash if you're just doing, oh, this SOP, this, you know, so just breathe and start somewhere and just do those things that can have the most impact and, you know, implement them. And, you know, we always just say, you know, inspect what you expect. And, you know, there's a great book by Gino Wickman called Traction. His EOS model has been integral in me understanding best practices. And just there's a lot there. And we don't, that's a whole nother podcast to try to unpack that, but that's a great resource. If you want to look that up, I think that would be a phenomenal place to start.
I love it. You're dropping wisdom bombs right there. EOS is great.
Yeah.
That's a big rock. Grab that big rock.
That is a big rock. That is a big rock. We talk about it. If you've read Traction, you understand what the big rock is. No pebble there. All right. So one of the other things, and this is something that has come up in discussion with folks and something you and I both experienced, but it's about avoiding value killers. And I'm sure we both have stories where we probably, I don't know if we want to go down that road of just where, you know, either things have blown up or, you know, something gets uncovered and man, it kind of blows up. And so the question is, what structural or operational mistakes have you seen derail or devalue a sale at the closing table?
Yeah. Well, great question. I don't think that I've ever seen it happen at the closing table, right?
Sure,
Usually, the problems are unearthed in due diligence.
Right.
So, one would be just being honest and genuine. Like, you know, listen, it's like, I get it, right? Especially for a founder. Your baby's beautiful, right? It's their baby. They've put blood, sweat, and tears into it. Just to have a good level check with some advisors or friends that can speak into counterbalancing your enthusiasm for what you've built with a little bit of realism and perspective, that's super helpful, because it's one thing to be excited and in a healthy way promote your business. It's another to have a little bit of almost a fantasy of what it's like when the reality is something different. And so that can really backfire and lead to, you know, just missed deals where it's like, if you hadn't oversold on the front end, you know, leading up into or through an LOI, you know, this would never have been an issue. And so I think that's where advisors really come in handy, is to kind of stress test or provide a gut check on, like, hey, you said this, and that. You've said this is what your sales pipeline looks like. But the reality, like, show me the stats for that. Well, these aren't supporting that. We need to revise the narrative surrounding sales pipeline, you know, to have it be presented in a way that's still, you know, positive and promoting the opportunities that are on the horizon, but not in a way that you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, we've already discussed some of them, but like we have a top 10 list that we usually reference to folks, but and I think the top three we've already talked about. And, that's your financials. If they're messy and in order and not in order, that's just going to be a headache. We talk about contracts or terms with vendors or customers, or even your employees. Those things can, really kind of mess up or devalue. Like I think you mentioned this before. Sometimes these things we uncover doesn't mean there's not going to be a deal. It's just going to be, let's revise, the multiple or this or that because, certain things are coming to light. And then we talked about the owner dependency. Like those are the top three, in our minds but those are, like you said, well before the closing table, but just things that you can work on well ahead of time. And that's something you and I have talked about a lot about, in the industry, in the space of mergers and acquisition or business owners wanting to sell. Like the more, folks like you and I can get with them way upstream to help them just really even just talk about business growth.
Yep.
But you can get things in order well before you even, want to sell, or even if you decide not to sell, guess what? Your business is going to be way stronger. And that's a big thing that, Built to Sell kind of really preaches and talks about. So that's really good.
Yeah, that's smart. And just to riff on that a little bit, when it comes to contracts too, like, hey, let's figure out a customer concentration issue before it's an issue. Yeah. So that's where preparing to go to market like a year or two out, where you're like, hey, I'm really moving this direction. Like that should be something, not to say that you can't do a deal if you have serious customer concentration. You might find an acquirer that's in that same space and the concentration is actually attractive. Right. Okay, that's a possibility, but that's a possibility a minority of the time. Usually customer concentration is not going to be attractive. And so that's something easy to address, just as long as you've got enough runway to do it.
Yes, the runway is important. It is important. All right, so this last question I have, and obviously one of the things that's near and dear to our hearts is just, where does faith enter the picture, right? So much of this is Christ followers, and our foundation being in serving God and just understanding all the wisdom that's in the Bible and leaning on it for its truth and goodness. It's almost, I'd say almost could be a no-brainer question, but I think it has a lot of facets to it. But how does a seller's faith in God and belief in God's word apply to any and all of these logistical steps when someone's taken into consideration, selling their business? I mean, that's a big, broad question there, I know, but it's just, we've seen it being applied in our lives and just in others' lives, but maybe just kind of speak into that a little bit, where faith in God's word and all that is true really plays out, and as we consider these X's and O's of what we need to go through.
Yeah, I think that's a question that, me as a Christian business owner didn't think about enough back when I was doing my thing. And, I'm curious to hear your response to it too. Here's where I land on that. There is, as a follower of Christ, you and I, and hopefully every other believer out there knows that we're saved by grace alone, through faith alone, right? By Christ alone. And, and that same kind of dependence and neediness and, fallibility that I had in the first place to need Christ, right? It follows me into business. I've still got the flesh. I've still got a propensity to think more of myself than I should, or not necessarily wield biblical principles. So to your question specifically, like as a believer, well, I should be looking to the word to inform me of how I should shape my business, regardless of an upcoming transaction, right? Like I should hope to imbue within my business Christian principles that make life for employees, make the brand, make customers' experience of the company different than other places that don't have Christian principles, right? We want to create the opportunity to let Christ's light shine, to build bridges, to relational ministry bridges that allow us to share why there's a difference. And what's wild is I think that our culture, even though you can make a big case for it's, never been as dark, I would also say it's never been as hungry for it either.
Yes.
And so people are attracted to, like, there's something going on here that's different,
Yeah.
and I want to know what it is, and they're open to asking. And so, you know, the significance of going to the word and allowing it to inform you in terms of how you build a business, how you treat people, how you treat customers. It's, again, it's not rocket surgery, right? You can literally just treat other people the way you want to be treated, right? Love the Lord your God with everything you got, and others like you love yourself. Like, that's a pretty sound business practice.
Yes.
And, you know, as it relates to going to sell a business, for a seller, you really want to, again, if your faith is meaningful to you, right? If it's a significant part of your life, then hopefully you're trying to, in some capacity, not always perfectly, you know, there's plenty of days where I come home and I'm like, Lord, forgive me. I totally messed that one up, you know? And frankly, that builds a great opportunity for me to go back and apologize. And that's can be even more compelling and winsome. But, you want to basically try to, use that as an opportunity to be real with people into a transaction. And the more genuine and real you are, and faith is a part of that, of who you are, right? Then I think that will also be a benefit when it comes to sell, because even if they're not believers, right, they can still recognize good principles. And guess what? It's the good book. It might be chock full of good principles that are going to benefit your business. You'll have better, you know, retention. You'll have better, you know, top line, bottom line, like the Lord just makes things better. He designed the way life should work. And so, you know, it's not a bad thing to incorporate some of that stuff. And I say that tongue in cheek, but we really want to be doing that and looking for ways to do it more effectively, more, they'll allow it to permeate business more, and also seek out peer relationships or advisor relationships where they also are on that same journey of how can I make God and his kingdom more manifest in my business? You know, finding those people, finding those advisors to help you think through what it looks like to be a kingdom oriented enterprise. I mean, that's going to be really, it'll pay dividends, put it that way.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, wholeheartedly. And that's, you know, you covered a lot with that. And I think, obviously I agree. And, you know, for me, you know, it'd take us a whole nother podcast. And I actually did a podcast that told a little bit of my story, my journey of faith. And I guess I'll just say 2 points. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about selling or whatever, and as some of the topics we've talked about, you're like going, oh man, that's a lot or whatever. Like, part of my journey is I had that aha moment, you know, in 2017 where I just thought that was a lot. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this or whatever. But as Jay, you recommended and said, you know, God is a big God. And if you're there to please him and he's calling you to do A, B, and C, he will equip you. And so that's the thing. You lean on him and he's going to bring the people around you that you need, you know, getting other advisors and peers to help you along that path. Lots of great peer support. I mean, C12, you know, Jay and I know C12 very well. Great organization as a business owner to help journey through. They were the saving grace for me and my business as we grew. There's all those kinds of things, but I go back and I'll kind of maybe close this out with this because it was a proverb that kind of got put on my plate recently. And Proverbs 24:27 says, prepare your work outside, get everything ready for yourself in the field. And after that, build your house. And so the work to be done, the building to be done, it talks about preparing and get ready. And I think that anticipation of what is good and what God has for you is important. I think you do have to prepare. You have to sow the ground on certain aspects of it. But there's a lot to get ready for. And to me, that just spoke to me that you just need to start stepping into it with people that are going to be on your side and for you. Lean into God, lean into his word, and he'll show you that path. And it'll be different for every single person out there. You know, I've seen God work in so many different ways. It's just, you can't even count them, in different business owner friends of mine and how he's taken them from A to B to C. And it's all been good. It's just been phenomenal.
Well, and it's funny too, and I might be misquoting the reference, but you made me think of it. I think it is out of Proverbs 24. It might be 24:10. I was about to look it up on my phone, but then I'd be looking down and you'd think I'm not paying any attention to you.
That's all right.
But, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he who refreshes is refreshed, will be refreshed. And so that's a great principle too, right? Like that's hey, how do I want to conduct myself in business with employees, building a team, selling a good product, like all those ways? Do I want to be doing something that's going to be a blessing to other people? If I follow that, then I will be blessed. And I think that's equally applicable in a transaction, right? How you approach your disposition to approaching a transaction, right? Which you think about the word transaction, it's like, well, it's got to start, it's got to finish, pay me my money, I'm gone after X amount of time. That can suck the humanity out of reality. And so there are real people that are in your business that you want to do right by. There's real people on the other side of the closing table that you want to do right by. If you're a follower of Christ and they find out you're a Christian, you really want to represent the Lord well. So there's a very significant personal process that needs to be like intentional and incorporated within the M&A process if you're a believer. And so, or, run in parallel at least.
Yes.
And so, I think these principles are awesome. And there is an endless depth to draw from in terms of inspiration from the word, from other believers. And the cool thing is too, that there's a growing community of faith-based entrepreneurs and business owners that are on the journey. And they realize, I think it was Billy Graham who said, hey, the next great awakening is going to happen in the workplace. Like it's not going to happen in a church. And so we've got tremendous potential as believers within the private sector to have unbelievable eternal impact. And that's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, that is great, Jay. And I know your time is precious, and I know you don't want to keep everybody else too long. But man, I'm so appreciative that you joined us again here on this podcast. And for you listeners out there, I hope you're gaining some wisdom and some knowledge and maybe answer some questions. But, if you want to hear more of this kind of stuff, feel free to always just, hit like or subscribe or whatever, and just reach out if you want to reach out and have specific questions. I can put you in touch with Jay or myself, and we'll be more than glad to just have conversations to help direct you a little bit and point you to some other resources that might be beneficial. So thank you. Appreciate everyone. And you guys have a great day.
Great being with you.